Hello, and welcome to POMA Does, a podcast produced by the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. We provide a voice for osteopathic medicine and share insights on issues important to osteopathic physicians, residents, and students, as well as those who embrace the osteopathic philosophy. POMA's mission is to promote the distinctive philosophy and practice of osteopathic medicine for our patients, our members, and the communities we serve. Thanks for tuning in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the POMA Does podcast. I'm proud to say this is episode number 105. My name is Joe Zawisza, and I'm a former president of Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. I'm currently chair of the Digital Engagement Committee. I'm joined today by my wife, Angela Zawisza, who is the current POMA president, here to talk with her about her year ahead. This is really kind of a neat thing for us to do because we actually recorded the first POMA Does podcast, episode number 1, 4.5 years ago when I was president, and she interviewed me on some of my initiatives for the year ahead, although admittedly we were halfway through the year at that point, but we had a lot of fun doing that. And one of the things that came about during my presidential year, of course, was this podcast series, which is why episode number 1 was done that year. And I got to admit, I never thought I'd be sitting here introducing episode number 105, 4.5 years later. So with that, I'd like to introduce Angie, my wife and our president, and let her talk a little bit about herself and how her presidential year has gone so far and where it's going to go. We're 4 weeks into your presidency. But yeah, wow is right. And before you know it, you look back and you say, wow, that was 4 years ago. I can't believe that, 5 years ago. But it's been going well so far. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where we are.
Hi, everyone. So again, my name is Angie. I am currently your POMA president. I actually, in a lot of ways, am surprised to be here. You know, first of all, it's episode number 105. But if you think about it in a broader perspective, I never really expected to be in Pennsylvania in the first place. I grew up in Missouri, graduated from Des Moines University, wound up at Geisinger Medical Center for residency, and here I am. Never really expected to be POMA president either. So, Joe, you said in your speech at my installation that, you know, there's something you should know about your president and that she never really wanted to be your president in the first place. And definitely a little bit of truth in that. Obviously, I do now. But 6 years ago, before we started the podcast series, I was happy, you know, just focusing on my career and our kids and in that stage of your life where you're not really sure which way is up. And I was just watching you go through the ranks of POMA, so to speak, and, you know, started hearing more and more what you were talking about and the things that POMA was doing. And when you vacated the trustee spot to be an officer, I said, oh, I'd like to do that. That sounds great. And 5 years later, here we are. So it's been sort of a whirlwind from that perspective. And at the same time, seems to have been forever.
Just want to let our listeners know you still do focus on your career and our kids, even though they're currently locked in our basement.
Hopefully nobody calls CYS or anything like that. We'll let them out here in a little bit. They've got food and water. They're fine.
Yeah. Presidency is something, and POMA is something that you've added to the list of your many talents and done really well. And I think, as you kind of touched on, that's a sign of how remarkable of an organization POMA is too. You saw the things that we were doing for our members, for our physicians, and for our patients, for communities, and that led to you getting more involved.
Yep, absolutely. That was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and even if we have some of our students listening, more years ago than I care to admit, when I was in medical school and didn't really think anything about, I would have been a member of the Iowa Osteopathic Medical Association at the time and didn't really even give it a second thought. So if you're a student listening, and well, thank you for listening in the first place. But second of all, if you don't otherwise have any involvement, just wait. We'll get you there. But this is more supposed to be about the year ahead. I promise we'll get there. So I've chosen a theme for this year, and it took some thought and wanted to be purposeful about it. But one of the things is that POMA is going to be celebrating its 125th anniversary here in 2028. Amazing. And osteopathic medicine specifically has come a very, very, very long way in the last 125 years. I mean, it was DOs finally achieved full practice rights in the state of Pennsylvania. And, now there's even more things to fight for in terms of physicians and what physicians need in order to be able to do the best job to serve their patients. And really, that's what POMA is about, is what we can do to help you, our listeners, do the best that you can and be the best physician that you can be without constraints from, laws and organizations and that sort of thing. So we have a lot of members in our organization now, past presidents, especially, who were around and very much involved felt when, in 1978, when the state finally gave full practice rights over to osteopathic physicians. And so we have that perspective, but we also have 4 medical school campuses in the state of Pennsylvania. Soon, in the next couple of years, from my understanding, there to be a 5th. And so we have a whole host of osteopathic medical students who are automatically POMA members that we want to help as well and want to provide and advocate for as well. So we really do have the full end of the spectrum from, beginning to end in terms of supporting osteopathic physicians. So I would like to take the experience and the wisdom of our osteopathic physicians that are closer to retirement age, along with the energy and the bright ideas and the technological capabilities of our younger generations of physicians. I mean, don't blame me. I was in medical school when MySpace came out, so it's been a while, and really continue to really dive deep into what POMA can do to advocate for as members, not just our members, but all of osteopathic physicians in the state. It's an interesting perspective. If you look at just our membership numbers over the last 5 years or so, the actual number of physicians who are members has stayed about the same over the last 5 years. However, there are significantly more osteopathic medical students and physicians in the state of Pennsylvania. And so to use the term market share, our market share has dramatically decreased over the last 5 years. About 5 years ago, we had about 43% of eligible physicians and students in the state of Pennsylvania that were members of POMA, and now it's just down to just 29% last year. So many organizations are going through this. It is not specific to POMA. It's not specific to the field of medicine, and it's not specific to any state whatsoever. So all organizations across the board are seeing an issue with membership. And I feel as though people still need POMA, even if you don't necessarily realize it. And I understand why you don't necessarily realize it, because again, 20 years ago, I didn't realize that I needed a state affiliate organization to advocate for me either. But now I do. And my goal this year is to get the word out, so to speak, to all osteopathic physicians and medical students in the state as to why we are the organization for you. I don't think it's an overnight fix. I think if I had the answer, I could retire from medicine. I won't, because I like my job. But, there's not a one size fits all solution to this. It's not like if any other organization finds the answer, that answer is going to be the same for POMA either. So I am really looking to get information and harbor ideas from every member across the board, all of our committees, to really, drill down deep and find out what we can do to increase membership, so to speak. Like I said, it's not easy, and I don't think we'll get the answer in a year, but we can certainly start to.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something we've been working at for a while, plugging at. It's funny that when I was president 5 years ago, the number that we went around the state saying is that, we had 12,000 DOs in the state and about, plus our students, residents, and we were, trying to increase membership then. And that number has only grown. It was a lot easier visiting the different institutions because there just weren't that many. There were 3 places to visit, and it was kind of easy to knock that out. And you have more to visit now than we did. Although visiting was a little difficult then because we were just coming out of the COVID pandemic, but that's changed now too.
Certainly going to be putting more miles on our car this year.
You kind of jokingly said that your theme this year is a little bit of a mouthful, but can you tell us what it is?
Oh, yeah. So my specific theme is honoring the past while preparing for the future. Again, sort of touching on the wisdom and the expertise of our older generation of physicians, I guess.
Experience,
yes. Of our experienced physicians, but recognizing that all of the osteopathic medical students in the state, all of our residents in the state, and our young physicians in practice are really the future of osteopathic medicine in the state. And we want to be there for you. We want to be prepared to support you for the next, 30, 40 years of your career as well.
It's amazing when you talk about that. One of the things that always makes me chuckle is this podcast series itself was something that we really got off the ground with the help of really students, but also residents and interns too. But, it was something that we had heard from our members. We knew that podcasts were a thing. We knew that our members were interested in them. We went to the drawing board and said, how do we do this? And we threw around some ideas, but we really weren't getting anywhere until we had some interested students who joined our committee and spoke up. So I encourage all of our students, residents, interns, you may think that you don't have the right experience or the right know-how or the right stature to be a part of this organization. But I'm telling you, as a past president and a committee chair, you do. And it really was their expertise that got this off the ground, letting us know how we do it, how we do podcasts and what makes good episodes and that kind of thing. So really appreciate that. But I chuckle, when we talk about honoring the past, and say it again. I promised I was listening.
Honoring the past while preparing for the future.
While preparing for the future. And, it was really the future that helped us get this off the ground, and could say something very similar for a lot of our other things that we've done over the years. Our POMA app, for example, that was something else that, 10 years ago, we didn't have anything like that. And it was about 7 years ago, I think. And an idea that came from our younger physicians that said, here's what an app is. And I think some of us now, older members, even at the time we were young, older members, but we had smartphones. We knew that there were apps on them, but we had never even thought about the possibility of using an app for your membership organization. So they really helped us get that off the ground too. And then not just what the young physicians did, but many of our experienced physicians, we found out they really liked some of those features that we came out with, whether it was a podcast or a new way of doing a newsletter, or, some of the other things that we've worked on in education and whatnot. So I think that's a great theme, and it really does acknowledge not just the obvious of what it is, but how we're an organization for all of our members, from the guy or gal that sets foot on the medical school campus for the first day of their career, all the way up to the physician who closed his or her practice, or maybe the physician who's been retired for 10 years and just wants to stay active in the field of medicine that way. So I think that's a great theme and really good for our organization.
We've started to sort of freshen things up already. We did a communications audit last fiscal year, and out of that audit, one of the things that came out was something that we already knew we needed to do, and that was we refreshed our logo. The seal of the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association is still the same, but our logo is different. And we have some new branding as well. And soon to be coming, we will actually have a new website as well. It'll be a lot easier to navigate. No more of that sidebar that a lot of people find cumbersome to work with. I found out all sorts of information about websites from this communications audit and how there's templates and everything like that and all this stuff. So we couldn't get rid of the sidebar until now because of the template that we were using. So, those are a couple of things that came out of the communications audit, but there's a lot of other things that we learned on how best to communicate with our members and, how to best capture each type of member, because, generally students wish to hear communications in one way versus mid-career physicians like myself versus the more experienced physicians and that sort of thing. So, how best to reach each one of our members so that they can even just get the information about all the things that POMA is doing. So I really do feel like there is something for everyone at POMA. And again, 10 years ago, I was just focused on everything but POMA. And I think it's a testament actually to how great the organization really is, and that I saw you kind of rising up through the ranks and going to board meetings and talking about the things that POMA was starting to do, and, how really interesting that was and how much fun it was too, honestly, to sit there and talk with some of the other trustees and other members and really start to engage with other people and find out, their perspective and other things that we can do to help. So I remember when you were president and I was, a trustee. So I was in on the same governance meetings that you were on and everything like that. And there were people lining up to talk to you after the meetings because everybody, wanted to have their voice heard. And you did a great job listening to those perspectives and implementing what we could. And I'm looking forward to doing the same thing at the end of the meetings this year.
You'll do a great job at that. I mean, I know you always want to hear my ideas. You have me write them down and then I have to throw them in the trash can.
It's your own filing system.
Yeah, I think that's certainly one of your strengths. And we can't talk about the year ahead without talking about how your call for volunteers went a few months ago. And I don't want to share your news, that's for you to do, but just how many responses you had and the very good challenge that created for you.
Yeah, forming the committees this year was quite the challenge. So we put out the call for volunteers every January or February. It's our way of members and current committee members, as well as just members at large in the organization, letting us know that they wish to be a part of a committee. Committees are the structure of POMA. They are the reason that POMA does everything that they do, and everything that we do. Yes, it gets approved by the Board of Trustees at the House of Delegates, but all of the ideas come from the committees. And so they're really important, and you want to do a good job putting it together. And I definitely had a challenge this year because with the call for volunteers, we got 100 responses. 100 different people that wanted to be involved. Most of them wanted to be involved on more than one committee as well. So 66 of those 100 responses were people who were not currently on a committee, which just blew my mind. And it blew my mind even more that most of them were actually students. So I was really excited to see how eager everyone was to participate in a POMA committee. And unfortunately, that meant that I couldn't find a place for everyone. And so I'm sorry if you're listening to this podcast and I didn't put you on a committee. I promise, no hard feelings. I just had some numbers to work with and some logistical issues to work with. But I thought that was pretty exciting and pretty successful. I did change around the call for volunteers a little bit this year. I don't know. There's no way to know if that helped with responses or not. So I do view that as a success. And I'm really curious to see if that continues. We're just, like you said, 4 weeks into the year so far and 48 more to go.
I think one thing, though, as you said, for those who may be listening who didn't, unfortunately weren't able to be put on a committee because of constraints of space, whatever, that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from them.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of the easiest being email, just to email POMA@POMA.org. We'll get you in touch with it. There's the calling the central office, 717-939-9318. Not that I've called that number a bunch of times. They'll get right with you. We're available on just about any form of social media you can think of. You can go to our website and soon to be new and improved website, as you said, or various other ways, or reach out to somebody reach out to a DO in your area. If they are a POMA member, then they know the ways to get in contact with us. And if they're not a POMA member, then tell them they better be and get them to sign up and join you at a meeting. But every part of Pennsylvania is in a district, and every district has a chair who will be happy to talk to you. Certainly, you'd be happy to talk to members. So we're a physician-led organization, as you mentioned, and we mean that. Physicians lead everything we do. You mentioned about fun during my year, and it certainly was fun. It was a lot of hard work, too. It was exhausting in a good way, and happy that it went that way. But it's fun because you meet with our members, you meet in their communities, and you help them. You help them with problems that they have and work with them to make things better for them and ultimately for their patients and the communities they serve. So
absolutely. One of the simplest ways to divide POMA members into groups would be employed physicians who are employed by a health system and independent physicians. And I'm employed, you're independent. So we have a little bit of dichotomy in our own house anyway, but I know what it's like to be an employed pediatric hospitalist. I mostly sort of know what it's like to be an independent solo family practitioner like you are, but I don't know most of the other perspectives out in the state, and I'm not going to know unless you tell me. So I encourage you to reach out, like Joe said, POMA@POMA.org. They'll just forward the email along to me, and we'll figure out how to help you out with what you need.
Great. So I think that we're on a good path to honoring our past and moving towards our future. I'm going to be able to say that in my sleep by the end of your year. I promise.
You'll finally remember what the name of it is, and it'll be time to install the next president. So
the next president. So Dr. Roth, if you're listening, just come up with something a little easier for me to say. Yeah, so I think we're off to a great start, 4 weeks into our year. And as you said, 48 more to go. But you're counting in a good way, I'm sure. Just living with you and being married to you, you've had a lot of fun so far. And I can truly testify to anybody who may have a doubt. Yeah, she may not have wanted to be your president at first, but she's definitely ready for it and is more than eager to be your president now. So I think POMA made a good selection. She's not paying me to say that. We're in different rooms, so she's not prodding me in the ribs or anything.
Hopefully everyone sees now why I picked you to be on the podcast with me, just to hear all those compliments. Thanks.
So I think POMA's in good hands. And is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up here?
Just thank you for listening. Reach out if you have any ideas on how to improve the organization, or reach out if there's anything that we can do to help you. We're seriously the only organization in the entire state of Pennsylvania that is solely dedicated to osteopathic physicians. We're here for you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. And to all of our longtime listeners, I appreciate you making this dream a reality, or, rather the task I was assigned years ago to start a podcast series. But it's really quite an honor to be able to say that this is episode number 105, and hopefully we have many more episodes to come. So we thank you all for listening and looking forward to 48 weeks of your presidency, Ange, and all the great things you're going to accomplish. And you've got a great leadership team working with you, a great staff working with you, and excited for everything.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of POMA Does. Be sure to subscribe to POMA Does wherever you listen to your podcasts, and tell your friends and colleagues to tune in. Learn more about osteopathic medicine and POMA on our webpage, www.poma.org, and join the conversation on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Or email us at poma@poma.org. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time for another edition of POMA Does.